Okay, hello David.
Hello Suzanne.
It's an absolute honour and a pleasure to have you here in Spain with us. We've been waiting for a long time because we've been following your videos for quite a few years now, and on a personal level I have been absolutely dying for you to come over here because I've been talking a lot about your work, and I've spent the last 3 or 4 years being an absolutely crazy Irish woman.
There's a lot of them about, you know.
Following her heart, and I really needed somebody like you to come and set things straight so that I wouldn't feel all alone in my crazy little world. So
well, it's fantastic to be in Barcelona. It's an amazing city. First time I've been here. Just the history of it and the buildings and the architecture. You've got to come. If you've never been, you've got to come. It's fantastic.
Well, this is your 54th city where you're coming to present your event.
54th country, yeah.
54th country, and that's bigger news as well, where you're coming to do your major event. And in fact, 1,500 people are waiting for David Icke on Saturday. They're going to be crowding up at the entrance, very anxiously waiting to get in and listen to you.
I've just been to the venue yesterday, and it's magnificent. It's like a football stadium, you know. I don't know whether to go and talk or take a ball out with me. It's just amazing venue. So I can't wait to start, really.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have a lot of hand claps. Yeah, a lot of people driving you on and making you very excited.
Well, it's extraordinary to me, Suzanne. It's surreal because I sit in my little flat in the Isle of Wight, just off the south coast of England, in my little office with my computer, and I just turn the stuff out and all the rest of it, and then you start travelling on tours like this. Like I've just been to New York and San Francisco and Lisbon, and now to Barcelona, and I never fail to be shocked at how far this information has got out. You know. When you've got people coming up to you, you know, in a city you've never been to, doesn't speak your language, saying, you know, you inspired me to open up and to see things. It's so moving to me. It makes me want to cry, really. It just makes it all worthwhile, and it's a joy to do it. You know, it really is. It's a privilege.
Well, we mentioned to David that nobody here, in fact, knows his books because his books are still not published. In fact, the presentation of the book is going to be on Friday.
Just coming out, yeah.
Yeah, so he was so amazed that nobody had read any books, so he was wondering, where did all the information come from? Exactly, you know, to be for him to have such a big audience on Saturday.
I was staggered when they said how many was coming, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you've been on this pathway now for about 20 years.
Yeah.
And you started off...
And it don't seem a day too long.
Yes, 20 years is a long time, and it feels like it, I'm sure.
No, actually, I'm getting more energized, Suzanne,
yes,
actually.
Yeah.
I really am, you know. The toughest part of it was... putting the chairs out in dusty halls, no one sitting on them, and then putting the chairs back and going home. Poor when I arrived, that was the tough. This is a joy now that you get such energy from seeing the dominoes fall. It's fantastic.
When you came to Barcelona and you saw the big hall where you're going to be giving the talk, what did you feel? What did you imagine when you looked out there in those seats? What was your first reaction?
Well, the size of it, and how high it goes up, and you know, every time these days when I go to a venue like that, I think of speaking to 8 people in Chicago, and. I did another event the next night, and 4 turned up. So I obviously lost half the audience. But like I say, the word is surreal. It's like almost it's happening to someone else. You know, I went to Lisbon last week and walked out into a full hall in a country that where I've had no previous contact. Just amazing. But it's beyond me, and it's beyond what's happening in terms of what I do, it's the symbol and the confirmation that humanity is moving into another level of awareness. And that is just fantastic, because the world that we perceive and the world that we experience is simply the holographic expression of our state of being collectively. And because, we've been suppressed and manipulated into these little boxes of perception that see ourselves as small and insignificant, and the world as something we cannot affect. Therefore, we project that limited, suppressed, a myopic state of consciousness out as a holographic expression. And so we live in a world of control, of suppression, of a sense of limitation of potential, of I can't, I'm little me, I could never. And as this awakening continues and expands, and it is this tour now, this few weeks since I last left England, New York, San Francisco, Lisbon, and here, I've been doing this for 20 years, as you say. Something shifted. Something has shifted. This is different. This is not like it was before. I get emotional about it because it's just so incredible to see humanity wake up, because you know that all these things that manifest as injustice, of violence and appalling treatment of children and all the rest of it, that is a manifestation of the state of human consciousness. And as we awaken out of that nonsense, out of that stupidity, out of that ignorance, and we're moving into a world for our children and grandchildren, and I intend to be around for the start of it, where the world that we've known is going to come down, and a very different world, a much better world, is a kinder, nicer, more conscious world is going to emerge. And it's just, it's fantastic. It's just such a joy to be involved with it.
It's just amazing what you say, David, because on a personal level myself, because I'm teaching a lot of people about waking up. I'm working with what I call philosophical psychiatry, is changing the mind and putting the Prozac in the bucket.
That sounds posh, doesn't it?
More Platon and less Prozac. I was giving classes to 20 people per class for these last 15 years. And just since, say, June, July, the classes are not 20, there are not 20 people in the class, there are 120 in the class. And there's a turnover of at least 120, and then a waiting list. And this is just all built up over the last summer. So this shift is moving really, really fast. But the surprising thing, on that level, when we're talking about energy therapies and all those kind of like sort of new agey themes, we're getting professionals who would have looked at that like as something really heebie-jeebie, really weirdo years back. And we've got doctors coming into those classes, psychiatrists, the medical field, big bosses of huge firms, and the lady that cleans their toilet as well. Everybody's open up. Yeah, this humble and the simple people are moving in with these supposedly intellectual and people with high cultural levels, and they're all mingling together with no distinction under the same roof of, hey, where am I going? I'm looking for something else. I'm not going to stick with just what the system offers.
Well, this is people. Yeah. This is people moving out of the left side of the brain. The left side of the brain decodes everything as apart from everything else. It decodes things into a sequence. That's what we get time from, basically. And the right side of the brain sees everything as unified. This is why when you're connecting the dots in the world of how the world's controlled and how reality and the suppression of our sense of reality comes into that, you've got to get into the right brain. Because if you don't, you can't see the dots connecting, because all your left brain can see is dots. So when people start to expand out of the left brain prison, which the system systematically tries to put us in, education, media, and all the rest of it, then you do start to perceive everyone as the same, because you're moving out of that sense of apartness of the left brain, and crucially the sense of hierarchy. So I'm a doctor, you know, and I went to medical school and all that stuff, and you clean the toilets. Oh, really? Well, someone's got to do it, you know. But that's what the left brain, in its extreme, would look at that situation. But others would say, hey, we're all consciousness having an experience. And this is why this hierarchical, very fiercely hierarchical structure of power we have in the world is a reflection, once again, of our state of perception, or our state of unconsciousness. As this awakening unlocks us from the left brain and we move into a much greater, more expanded consciousness, that rigid hierarchy is going to disappear from society, because we're basically going to conscientize, for a word, conscientize it out of existence. It's a manifestation of our ignorance, our sense of apartness. That's what hierarchy is. And it's coming down, which is great news, Mr. Rothschild, isn't it? Hey, looking forward to it. I should. You could be one with the rest of us then.
Yeah. We see the system as maybe mission control, trying to keep us in a very suppressed state. So what I'm seeing is, especially through people who are asking for help through therapy, they're coming with extremely altered nervous systems, being attacked from all levels, their health, their physical health, their mental health, even on spiritual levels. How do you see mission control out there manipulating our physical health?
Well, the whole of this reality, including the physical body, is, as you well know, doing all the energy work you do, it's a vibrational information field. It's a vibrational information construct, you might say. And we see stress as something emotional, okay? But what it is at its prime form is stress is a distorted vibration. So as we feel stress, it sends a distorted vibrational resonance through the blueprint of the body's vibrational field, and it distorts it. And therefore, it manifests as eventually as physical, emotional, certainly, dis-ease, disharmony. And then we look at all the chemicals in food, and we see them in this holographic world as chemicals. But if you take them back to their base form, they're of distorted vibration. So when we take pharmaceutical drugs, what we're actually doing is taking a distorted vibrational field. Same with additives in food, aspartame and fluoride in the water. And so, and then of course, classically in terms of energy, we're living particularly in the cities and the towns, in these electromagnetic soups, these days, where with all the wireless internet and microwaves and mobile phones. And so when you put that together, the body's vibrational information blueprint is being bombarded with disruptive, distorting vibrational fields of various expressions. And that's why there's so much mental, emotional, and physical illness in the world. And, you know, a conscious world would not say, as politicians do, like in Britain, about the National Health Service. They say over the years, you hear it over and over again, we're treating more people than ever before. My question is, why? Yes. Why are you treating more people than ever before? Why are so many people ill and need treatment? Any conscious society says, what causes dis-ease, disharmony? Okay, we'll remove the cause. And then, staggeringly, the symptoms will disappear. And this is the kind of world we're going into as we become more conscious. And as you mentioned, the doctors break out of their, and scientists that could kind of interconnect with them, they break out of this straitjacket in the left brain where, when you look at it, you're born into the world, most people are born into left brain families. Mm-hmm. That's not a criticism. Most people in the world are left brain families. Why? Because that's what the system wants them to be and manipulates them to be. So the child comes up and gets brought up in a left brain kind of situation, then goes to school, and teachers talk to the child's left brain through school, through college, through university. And then in exams, they say, okay, now what we want you to do, in effect, is take all that information out the left brain, put it on a paper. If you do that really well, then you'll pass the exam. And then what do you want to be, a scientist, you, a doctor, you, or whatever? Okay, well, now you specialize and you go through the same process again, specialization. So a doctor goes through medical school, and what he says in his exams and of various kinds, practical and written, is what he's been told is the truth, not necessarily the truth. In fact, almost definitely most of the time not. And he has to repeat that version of truth to become a doctor, or he doesn't become one. Same with scientists and stuff. And then he has to practice. When doctors say, I'm in practice, I think, well, I want to see a doctor who's already got it right, thanks, who's still not practicing, But anyway, the doctor then has to practice in line with the alleged truth. Otherwise, he gets struck off, or he or she gets struck off. And therefore, what you've got in all these fundamental institutions that dictate our society and what we should believe is possible, impossible, real and not real, are all virtually left brain prisoners. And so this is where the resistance comes from doctors and mainstream scientists to moving into another view of reality. A, because it puts their own job and livelihood under threat if they go too far. And also because there are many psychological things that go on, like they have to start accepting that all that they've been taught to believe and all that they've believed and all the treatments they've been given, or many of them, simply are not only not the truth, but actually are very detrimental to the patient. So all this has to be absorbed and processed before they can start to move out and look at the world in a completely different way. The fact that more of them are shows just how powerful this energetic information changes, new epoch change is in its effect on more and more people. I look at people who have started to look at this in a different way, and I think, God, 2 years ago I'd have said, no chance. But that they have, and we're going to be shocked in the years to come, the next few years, at the people that are going to, the waters are going to break, and they're going to open their awareness to a very, very different perception of themselves and the world.
Yeah. You see, in very much so, children or the youngsters are being targeted. When I see young kids coming with all kinds of problems like attention deficit disorder, and then you check the kind of habits that they have at home, you see these kids are bombarded with television and all the little electronic machines. Now in schools they've introduced the computers, personal computers, for each student. They're not even going to be writing on their notepads very soon. It's going to be electronic. At the same time, I don't know any youngsters that are not eating chewing gum with the aspartame and drinking Coca-Cola with the aspartame as well. They're being given their shots of fluoride in schools still.
Yeah.
And I remember you commented the effect of fluoride on the pineal gland.
Yeah, it calcifies the pineal gland, which is part of the third eye, what some people might call the sixth sense level of our perception, because the whole idea is to hold people in five sense perception alone, because when we're in that state, we are living in a tiny, tiny fraction beyond a fraction of our infinite possibility. And that makes us controllable en masse by a tiny few who are manipulating our reality. Once people start to awaken, this is why this control system is terrified of this more than anything else, then you start to see what you couldn't see before. You start to see how the manipulation is going on, how the dots connect. But this is my feeling, Suzanne, about what's happening with children. This vibrational change that I started writing about 20 years ago, what I call the truth vibrations, when there was no evidence of it, but now magnificent evidence of it all over the world. It's increasing the vibration, and therefore we are able, if we can connect with it, open our minds to it, we are able to access higher levels of awareness, i.e. understanding all this stuff. Now, I was born in 1952, and I came into this reality when the energetic information state was much lesser than it is now, and is becoming, and nothing like what it's going to become. So I can come in at that level, even if I came in at the highest level possible, I could only come in at a certain level, and still interact with this world. But children today are coming in to a much more potentially expansive awareness that's available. This is what's waking people up. So of course, when children are born today, they can come in potentially at that level and perceive much earlier in their lives. I mean, we're seeing it than people that were born a while ago. Now, the control system knows this, and this is why children today are being targeted more than any other area of society. They've created this nonsensical new psychological state called attention deficit disorder. I suffered from that. It was called being bored stiff of what they were trying to get. I spent my time looking out the window at the games periods, you know. Used to say, but what's so-and-so times so-and-so? I said, I don't know, but they're 2-0 up, you know. It's like, I just didn't concentrate at all. I mean, I was saying to you today, I remember from my time at school, ratae corotinorum, because that was the Roman name for Leicester. And I remember one thing from my French lessons, which is, what's the time? Quelle heure a-t-il? And that's pretty much the lasting memory of my entire period at school. Thank you, God. But now they are targeting children more fiercely through the education system, more and more suppression, and these food additives, which when they rewire the brain and the chemical structure of the body, manifest in behavioral changes. And those behavioral changes are exactly the same symptoms as attention deficit disorder. So they're drugging the kids through chemicals, if you like, in the food, and then they're saying, oh, they've got a psychological problem. Here's some Ritalin. And of course, all this was talked about in Aldous Huxley's book, Brave New World, published in 1932, because he had access to where the agenda was going through things like the Fabian Society. And so children are now being targeted more than ever before to suppress this potential they have to start to awaken to much higher levels of awareness much earlier in life than those of us who came in a few decades ago. It's all systematic, it's all coldly calculated. But there's a thing here. Nothing can overwhelm consciousness in awareness of itself. And there are, one of the great things is to go around the world and meet young people who in recent times have been through this trash of a system designed to put them to sleep, to distort their sense of reality, to distort the balance of their mental, emotional, and physical, what we call physical state. And yet, there they are, awake, got it. And so the system is whistling in the dark, trying desperately to hold on to its epoch of control, an epoch that's dying as we look at it. So it can make things more difficult. You can't stop what's coming. It can't.
Yeah, I suppose the way is to make the parents more aware of what they give their kids to eat, get them to dedicate part of their day to leisure, to relaxation. We're finding these kids coming out of school like robots. In Spain, they come out quite late. At 5 o'clock is the time.
What time do they start?
They start at 9.
You are joking.
Yeah, 5 o'clock. And then if they do extracurricular activities, like my own daughter, they're coming out of school at 6:30, and then they get home and they're expected to sit behind a table under artificial light and do homework for hours and hours.
I have said all my life, the first sane decision any education system can make is ban homework. Yes. If you can't tell children what they need to know when you've got them for those hours every day, 5 days a week, then get another bloody job then. Yeah. The idea of homework is ludicrous. You know what we're looking at, right? This is the perception change that so many people, I think, need to look at so that they can be aware of their own situation. They think they're free, right? So let's look at the freedom of incredible amounts of people, even in the Western world. They get up in the morning. They have to get up at a certain time because they've got to go to work. Why have they got to go to work? Because the system has made their basic needs in life dependent on earning money. Figures on a screen that are created out of nothing by banks, and then we pay interest on them, figures out of nothing. And if we don't meet the payments because we lose our job because the banks have crashed the bloody economic system, the banks throw us out of our home. Hey, we're free, honey. And then they get in a car and they drive to work. And I've driven into Los Angeles with people every day for 1 week, and they were almost orgasmic when the traffic jam didn't start for another mile down the freeway that it normally does, right? And you sit there, and you get to work and you're tired, you have to get to work at a certain time, and then you're in prison all day because you have to do what you're told to do. You have to keep the bosses happy. You can't leave until a certain time, right? Then that's when they give you parole for the evening. And then you get in your car and you drive back and you're in the traffic jams on the way home. You get home, you're tired, you're frustrated, you're stressed, and then you have your tea. Then you watch the Gogglebox, the oblong hypnotist in the corner of the room.
The television.
And it tells you what to believe about the world and reality, and overwhelming yourself. And then you go to bed. And you take a sleeping pill maybe because you're so stressed you can't sleep. Oh, doctor, I can't sleep. Why is it? Because you're stressed. Why are you stressed? Look at your lifestyle, mate. And then you get up in the morning and you get in your car. It all starts again. Oh, he's free. He's got a good job. He has. Well, all right. Now, another part of this daily ritual is you come home, usually late, so you spend very little time with your children. And your children, they've just come back from prison because they left in the morning about the same time you did, and they go to their prison called a school. They have to be there at a certain time. They then have to be told what to do and do as they're told all day, while they're told what to believe, lesson after lesson after lesson, by teachers who've been through exactly the same process as the children are going through, and now they are programmed to program the next generation. Then they leave school, they get parole for the evening, when the school says you can leave, and they then take home homework, so that when the little leisure time they might have, they are, as you say, sitting there doing homework. Now, what is this doing? All I have not described yet in the day of the children and the day of the parents, if you like, one thing that involved the right brain being accessed. It's all left brain stuff. And what is the greatest thing to open the left brain of a child? Play. Play.
Creativity.
Imagination. Ad-libbing. Spontaneity. Ad-libbing. Imagination. Play and all the rest of it. And what they're doing, not least in Britain now, they're trying to squeeze that point from birth to the first academic type lessons. They're trying to squeeze that period smaller and smaller and smaller. And I heard Obama last year, you know, this amazing intellect who can read words off a teleprompter, but he's a stuttering idiot whenever it goes down. And he said, to meet the challenge of meet the challenge of the global economy. Now, meet the challenge of the global economy. Where did the global economy come from that's challenging us to more work and more education? From the very people that are imposing this education and stuff upon us. And he said children should spend more time at school. And they should reduce the period in the summer when they have a break from school to do what? To play and ad-lib and open the right brain. So it's all systematic. And this is why I focus so much on the nature of reality and how we interact with it. Because when we understand the themes of that, the way the system's structured it's like an open book. Yeah. It's structured to shut us down and stop us being the incredible awareness, consciousness that we really are.
Yeah, they're keeping us on mind mode. We have to think, we have to plan tomorrow. They're getting us out of the present. Because I know when you say like kids are playing, they're happy, they're free, they're inspired, and you can only get inspired, which we call in spirit, when you're out of your mind. So when do these kids actually have time to play and be free? Because we know that we're tired as parents when we arrive home, the kids are tired, and that's just
exactly.
Who wants to do homework at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, and the kids get cranky, and then that upsets mum and dad, and then it's just creating conflict in the family.
Okay.
So then all hell
Absolutely.
Gets loose, yeah?
So, kids, don't do homework.
Nothing.
Okay?
No homework.
No homework. Okay, let's have a revolution. No homework. If you can't tell us what you say we need to know, I don't necessarily agree with you. In fact, I don't. Between what did you say in Spain? 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock?
9 o'clock to 5 minimum.
And then homework?
And at the weekends as well. Homework at the weekends.
The thing is, what are we looking at? It's not, I'm going from home to school, is it?
No.
It's every now and again, I'm going from school to home. That's the relationship. No more homework. Tell them to stick it. Come on, revolution. Good bloody God. I mean, crikey, we're trying to bring our children up to be the full magnitude of who they are. And every day we say, goodbye, darling, and they go off to be suppressed in terms of the magnitude of who they are. Come on. We've had enough of this. I have.
Yeah. When we go back to the health thing, we know how mission control is trying to control our physical health. We are observing, especially in Barcelona, more and more presence of the chemtrails. The chemtrails are composed of aluminium. And this aluminium is also present in very much of the medication that is being prescribed for psychological problems, psychiatric problems, which is really making things worse because it goes and it gets implanted in the brain. It's stored up on the brain. So they're actually recognizing it's the cause of problems with Alzheimer's, etc., etc. So if they're chucking all this aluminium down on top of us with the excuse that it's climate control, for our benefit, for the crops, etc. What's your opinion on why are they doing that? Why are they targeting the whole population in an absolutely crazy, absurd way? What's their aim behind that? What's the issue there?
Well, it's crazy, but as always with this bunch of idiots, because that's what they are when you bring back the shield of their arrogance and intellectual superiority. They're bloody prats, as we say in England. Bunch of prats. But they're not...
Do you know what Barcelona airport's called?
What?
El Prat.
Is it?
Yeah.
Right. It must have a lot of dignitaries go through it then to earn the name. Anyway, the whole thing about the chemtrails is that there is method, as with so many other things, in their apparent madness, because they're clever, but they're stupid. And people go, well, what do you mean, Dave? Well, I mean is this. They're clever in the sense that they're intellectually clever, in the sense that they can know how to manipulate reality, manipulate people's perceptions, but they ain't wise. And wisdom is what is missing: wisdom, empathy, compassion, all these things, and cleverness without wisdom, which is what we're dealing with these people, is the most destructive force on earth. It's very clever to build an atomic bomb. It's not wise, however, to do so. This is the difference between the two. So although they're crazy, they're like the mad professor in many ways. They do know how technology works and how the body works. And as I've been saying for 20 years now, there is this vibrational change. I call it truth vibrations, and it's an information change, and we're going into a new epoch, what they call in Asia a yuga, a new age, dawning of the age of Aquarius and all that stuff. And they are desperate in every way possible to suppress that vibrational change's impact upon human awareness. And this is an important point. It just tells you just the magnitude of who we are, the magnitude of our true genius, which we've forgotten, that they are having to throw at us efforts to suppress this genius, this awareness, from every single angle possible. You've got the microwave and electromagnetic pollution, you've got that which distorts our ability to access this information, you've got the stuff in food, you've got the drugs, you've got the vaccines, and you've got the stuff coming from the sky, as you rightly say, chemtrails. A number of people, since I've been in Barcelona, have said chemtrails here are terrible, But I've seen them all over the world. Yeah. I've been out into the outback, if you might call it, of South Africa, and there's bloody planes going up and down, filling the sky with these things. I've sat in Arizona and day after day watched a blue sky become a cloudy day by the afternoon, as planes from the Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix have just crisscrossed the sky with this stuff. Yeah. And of course, because of compartmentalization, they say that the pilots probably think they're serving humanity, because it's always about global warming, whatever they tell them. Yeah, it's just protect. So they go out in their compartmentalized way, thinking they're serving the people, when they're actually poisoning the people, including their own families. This is what this is all about, and it's no accident that some of the content of these chemtrails has that effect on the brain that you were talking about. It's because that's the idea. It's to create distortions in our mental, emotional, physical state in every way possible. Because in so many ways, when you look at what's happening in the world in terms of the police state and control and surveillance and all this stuff, if you don't come from this understanding or a position where you look at reality in this way, then what it looks like, absolutely looks like, is that this control system is now increasing its power, increasing its control, and imposing itself more and more powerfully on humanity as it comes to its fruition of total global control. But I kind of see it in another way, from this perception of the truth vibrations, the epoch change, in that what they're trying to do is batten down the hatches against the biggest threat to their power there has ever been since they started to impose it. You've got people like Zbigniew Brzezinski, Jimmy Carter's former national security advisor, and not just an advisor to Obama, but a mentor of him and developer of him going back to the 1980s, saying to his fellow insiders that we are witnessing the biggest, he called it political awakening, the biggest awakening in human history. Well, not necessarily in human history, but known human history. Okay, I'll grant you that one, Zbigniew. And so they're seeing this awakening, and it's threatening their power, because more and more. I mean, look at the number of people that are turning to this in various ways now, and therefore they are in a panic mode increasingly, throwing everything at us like a cornered rat. We're going to see more manipulated wars. We're going to see more manipulated terrorist events that are created by the very people that then say we need more control of the people because of the terror. We're going to see an economic crash and many, many things, all designed to destabilize us, to put us in fear, in stress, to distort our ability to be affected by this vibrational change. But it's a last throw of the dice.
Yes.
You know, it's desperate. It's going to become increasingly desperate. And what's of course happening now is the more that people are informed of the techniques and the agenda, the more difficult it is for them to sell the agenda. When they say, you know, oh well, this bomber, he was going to bomb the plane and bring it down over America, and you look at it, you go, the only thing the guy did was set his underpants on fire, right? And they're talking about, and it was an expert bomb maker in the Yemen, because they're targeting the Yemen now, it's the new Afghanistan, who did the bombs in these packages from UPS and FedEx the other day, and he was the bomb maker who's an expert who did the bomb with a guy in his underpants. And I'm thinking, he's a bloody expert. Not one of the bloody things has worked yet. You know, he scorched his bloody underpants, burned his bum. The other ones never went off because they weren't bombs. It's all a scam. It's all a lie. But the great thing is, more and more people, you look at 10 years ago, 15 years ago, oh yeah, it's Al-Qaeda, it's dangerous, so they got to protect us. And now more and more people are going, it's a bunch of shit they're telling us. It's getting more difficult for them. And every day that passes, it's going to get more difficult. So Big Newman, you were underestimating that awakening. I tell you that. Underestimating. You hang about and see.
So people who are awake are very, very dangerous for the system. They're going to... It's going to be very contagious, so that's why we're making their job more and more difficult. That's
a very good word, actually, contagious. And the reason it's contagious is because the more people know, the more people get access through the more people who know to know. And so it becomes exponential. I was talking to people in Barcelona today who do blogs on these subjects and stuff like that in Spain. And they were saying exactly what I've experienced. And you mentioned earlier, you've experienced this sudden surge in interest, sudden surge in awareness. It's a fantastic time to be alive. You know, it really is, because we're going to see this control system that has imposed itself and suppressed the life force, the spark, the spirit of humanity for thousands of years. And we're going to have the privilege of playing a part in bringing this nonsense down. And bringing it down not just for the good of humanity, but for the good of these pillocks who are behind the control system. Because anybody who needs to control, needs to have control over, needs to control events, and he's terribly uneasy with any states of flux. Oh, I don't know the outcome. Oh, they are incredibly insecure people. Secure people don't want to control everything. They're happy to flow with life. and therefore, in the greater scheme of things, the end of this control system is actually going to, ironically but true, it's going to set the controllers free. Because at last they can start to face their true nature and their lack of power when faced with... You're right, you've got a cough. Their lack of power, she needs some healing. Their lack of
She's
power...
She's a student anyway.
In the face of true consciousness. So everybody wins in the end, but those behind the control system are going to have to face that they're in the end times. Not our end times, the end times of the control system. Though it won't seem like that for a few years. Maybe in the mainstream, but it's coming, and it's coming in my lifetime. I ain't leaving till it's happened, I'll tell you that. I won't have it.
So you're not going to take the flu shot this winter?
This is an important thing. There was it must have been one heck of a shock to the control system last year when they thought they were going to roll this swine flu jab out right across the world. Yeah. This could have been part of why Brzezinski said what he did. That certainly would have been part of the reason he said it. And suddenly, the whole game collapsed. You know, the house of cards came down. Why? Humanity said, no, we're not having it in vast numbers. So what they're doing now, this is why we have to keep streetwise, we have to keep our eyes on the ball. They're putting the swine flu shot in the seasonal flu shot. Now, there's one way of avoiding the swine flu shot, and that's not to have the seasonal flu shot, which actually means you win both ways, because you don't get poisoned by either. Yes. You don't get your system imbalanced by either. You don't get your immune system attacked by either. So we need to be aware of that, because I know that a lot of people do not realize that they've slipped what people rejected last year into the flu shot this year, trying to hide it. I think they learned a big lesson last year with the swine flu. Don't hype it too much, because you put it on center stage, and then all these people on the internet and around the world can then shoot you down and say, this is the real reason for it. We're going to have to get a lot more focused in a way, because I think they have learned this lesson, and they are going to be slipping things in as quietly in among legislation, for instance, that appears to have no connection to some of the laws. They're slipping into legislation that take freedoms away, but not overtly. This is a bill that takes freedom away. It might be for some other subject, and then they slip these things in, the sub-clauses, and they become law, but people don't realize they're becoming law, so there's no exposure of them. They're going to be doing that more and more and more, because I think they're realizing that when they put their game on public display now, they're asking for trouble.
They have a purpose. This is where it brings us to problem, reaction, solution. Why are they creating the need for people screaming out, like, give us a vaccine, give us a vaccine? There is an ulterior motive behind that when we get down to the idea of the issue of microchipping.
Yeah, I mean, this is the technique that I called a long time ago problem, reaction, solution. It's devastating, but once you are aware of it, it makes it impotent. And it has to sell us a version of a problem. It might not be a real problem. It could be a no problem, like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But it has to give us the perception or a real problem, which they can then offer the solution to. Where problem reaction solution breaks down is when you realize that the problem is there so they can offer the solution. Once you connect the two ends, then the whole process falls down. And this is again what is happening. You know, it's happening more and more as we get this information out. People are not buying it in anything like the numbers they were before. The perception is changing. People are starting to realize that governments are not there to serve the people, pharmaceutical cartels are not there to serve the people, and the system in all its facets are not there to serve the people. It's to serve someone else's agenda. And this is a change in the dynamics of perception of the world, which is devastating for the continuation of this conspiracy that's gone on for so long. It's being dismantled before our eyes by a greater awareness of the fact that it exists for a start, but then how it works. You know, I think of all the things that I've done in the last 20 years, coming up with the phrase problem, reaction, solution, and pushing that technique out and out and out, which the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, they have a Latin motto, ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. Create the chaos, offer the order out of it. That's problem, reaction, solution. Because when people get that technique, of course, was classically played on 9/11, create the problem, 9/11, reaction, outrage, fear, solution, war on terror, invasion of Afghanistan, by implication, if not directly, invasion of Iraq and so on. More and more surveillance, more and more control of people to protect us from terrorism, full body scanners. All of this came as a result of this war on terror scam. And as people understand it, it's becoming harder and harder to play that with future problem, reaction, solution events. And it's going to get harder and harder as more and more people become aware of that technique.
We talked about mission control attacking our physical health, our mental health as well, by the manipulation. What about our spiritual side? You yourself had your own spiritual, inverted commas, experience.
My head blew off.
Your head blew off.
Yeah, the rest of me went with it for a while as well.
And then it came back the way it did.
Yeah, it kind of came back and got put together again.
Like, obviously there was something really drastic that happened in your life that was that turning point that changed you from being a football presenter, working in the as a journalist. Something happened there that would you like to elaborate on that just a little bit so people know where David Icke is coming from, because to have that enormous, tremendous courage to go out and speak out against the system, and I still think we've only slightly touched a little bit on it, your talk on Saturday is going to expose it in a very coherent, logical way to build up to the major issues that you're going to expose, such as the moon matrix, reptilians, the secret societies, the 13 families, including the Rothschilds and Rockefeller, who are behind all of this, where there are very, very few people compared with the 7 billion people on the planet who need that, like, kick up the backside to wake up and realize who they really are. So to have that tremendous courage to face that structure and say, this is going to come down, mate. What happened in your life that made you get the guts to go out and speak out on a world stage?
Well, first of all, I can't stand injustice. It makes me, we're not furious anymore, but determined not to accept it. I've always been like that since I was a kid. I was brought up like that. My father was like that. But when I look back at my life now and what happened before 20 years ago, and the experiences I had, which were perfect for what I'm doing now, and when 20 years ago I went to the psychic and was told, all you have to do is follow the clues. It was all organized basically a long time ago. It's clear that for whatever reason, and I don't know, and I don't really care, because when I get out of this lens, I shall remember. But for some reason, I came to do this, what I'm doing now. There's lots of people who came to do it. And so what happened to me 20 years ago was going to happen to me from the moment I was born. It was the time for me to open up and become not aware, but to have an understanding that my life was not what I thought it was. And as the 20 years have unfolded, because people say I woke up. No, you didn't. You started to awaken. I didn't wake up 20 years ago. I started to awaken in a big way because my bloody head blew off. But it's a process of opening up and opening up and opening up, because, if you open up to some of these high dimensional energies and frequencies, and you're not ready for them, they'll just bloody blow your mind. Literally, they will blow your mind. And when I look back at what happened to me for 3 months after I had my initial massive bombardment of something on that mound in Peru in the early 1990s, for 3 months I was hanging on, because so much information was suddenly hitting my conscious mind. I was struggling to process it. So you can imagine that you've got to be ready for it. And so as I've gone on, I've opened my mind more and more and more. But it's basically it was something that broke me out of mind-body, into some other level of awareness beyond that. And so what happened is I started to speak from my perception outside of the previous box. And of course, people who are still in the box, because that's what the system does to them, they look at people like that and they say, you're mad, you're crazy, you're insane. And to them, I completely understand that it looks like that, because we are literally viewing reality from different points of observation. Therefore, we don't, I mean, some people might say, people in the box, though, we've all been there to start with, I don't understand why they don't see it. And then people in the box say, what do you mean not see it? You're insane. And it's literally, we're on different radio stations, different television stations. The more that as people have awakened over the last 20 years, the more there are people that you can interact with who say, yeah, I can understand what you're saying. You know, and when I look at my life, someone seems to have planned it in great detail, because I went through professional football, which gave me much about discipline and focus. And then the arthritis came, which gave me an enormous emotional trauma to overcome, great disappointment. And then I went into journalism, which showed me many things about how journalism doesn't work, into television, into politics with the Green Party, which showed me that politics is not there to change, but to suppress change, and that no matter what the name is on the door, it's the same mind blueprint in all the political parties. And then I went through in the early 1990s, as a result of my bang experience, enormous ridicule. And as a result of the enormous ridicule, I was able to let go the fear of what other people think. Now, you know, when you're experiencing, and I'm not talking about me sitting cross-legged on a mountain, oh, David Icke is a guru. No, I'm talking about this is everybody. Everybody, this is happened to anybody. Where in the experiencing of something, like me, when I couldn't walk down any street in Britain without being laughed at, you know, I lived my life to the sound of distant laughter for a while.
After the Wogan show.
Oh, yeah,
the talk show.
And in the experiencing of it, you think, what's happening to my life? Oh, my God. And then further down the road, once that is removed through harsh, extreme experience, that fear of what other people think, because they're all laughing at you anyway, that's what it seemed like. Not all were, but most were. Then you realize along the road, as information starts coming to you in the synchronistic way, that you're being, if you like, guided, urged to go public with the stories of reptilian shape-shifting entities manipulating planet Earth. And then you go a bit further down the road, like in the last year, and then you realize you're being handed this information that's saying the moon's not what you think it is, the moon's not a heavenly body like you think it is. Now, if I hadn't have been through that fire, that cleansing of the concern with what other people think, you know, what are you going to do? I'm going to talk public like reptilian entities shape-shifting. Are you kidding, mate? The moon's not real. Oh, you must be joking. No, you go and ask someone else. But because I'd been through that, I had no problem with it. I'm interested in what's happening. I'm not interested in what people think of me or what I say, because what they think of me and what I say is absolutely their business. It's none of mine. Yes. You know, yeah. I'm not trying to persuade anyone of anything, but I'm interested in what's happening. And if I get enough information for me to think, I reckon this is happening, I'm sure this is happening, then I'll talk about it. And then people will then make of it what they will. And you start to realize this is a big, important area, I think, as people move their perception of life. As I said many times, there are levels of us, levels of our awareness, levels of our consciousness that see our, if you like, human experience, what we call a lifetime, from birth to rebirth, from source of the river to the sea. And therefore, that level of awareness's perception of individual events is very different to the conscious mind, which symbolically can only see the next turn on the river. So, for instance, when I went through mass ridicule, I could only see the next turn on the river. And at that time, it was bloody close because I couldn't see very far. What's happening to my life? And I'm going through this nightmare experience. But this other level of me, which I was more and more aware of, and now I'm massively aware of, was basically saying, you see it like that, but I see it like that because I know what's coming around the corner, right? And so as I've flowed with this river, this journey we call life, as we all do, when I follow my intuitive knowing rather than my let's work it out mind, the more synchronistic my life becomes, the greater adventure it becomes. Amazing coincidences constantly occur because I've got the head out of the way.
Yes.
Because when you go with your intuition, I just feel to do this, then you often act outside of what we might call mainstream thinking and mainstream behavior.
You're out of your mind.
Yeah, you're out of your mind, which is, you know, we have this world of paradoxes or what I call, let's just call them opposites, where everything you see in the world virtually, you have to do that to it to see what's really happening, what's really true.
We're living upside down.
So we see about mind. He's got a great mind. He's got great intellect. But actually, that's a very, very low level of perception compared with what I call consciousness beyond that. And therefore, to be out of your mind, to be beyond your mind, is to be far more conscious than just being at the level of mind, thought. But when you go out of your mind, you start to see the world in a different perspective, and you start to behave and speak in a different way. And those in mind say you are out of your mind in the sense of you are crazy. But you're not out of your mind crazy, you're out of your mind perception.
Yes.
And therefore, to someone in mind alone, you appear to be crazy. Everything has to be turned on its head, I find, before you find the truth. And when I started to get out of my mind on national television, it was a very strange experience. But now, all these years later, and in fact for a long time since, my mind and my intuitive knowing have been speaking the same language. Because if you go with your intuition, even though the mind at the start is going, you can't do that, what are you going to do, what are you going to think of you, oh no, he's got to go in the Warwick show in a turquoise shell suit, oh my God, right? Then the mind observes, if you stick with your intuition, the mind observes eventually that although you get into some scrapes and you get into some challenges, actually following your intuition, it works out in the end. And it doesn't work out despite the challenges, it works out because of them. And what happens is your mind or your head, if you like, and your heart, your intuitive knowing, come together. And so when my intuition these days says, I feel to do this, my head just goes. It goes, okay, let's go. There's not the war, there's not the battle. And life becomes such an adventure because it's supposed to be. Yes. When you flow with your intuitive knowing, you're flowing with the flow of synchronicity, where things just appear as you need them and want them and or whatever. And what happens with the mind, which is programmed by the goggle box, the television and the education and all the rest of it, it sees everything in terms of limitation, conformity, acquiescence, and thus it's constantly trying to stop you following this intuitive flow. So once you say, okay, you have your say, fine, I've listened, I'm going anyway. Then you start to break the stranglehold on our perceptions of low, limited mind over infinite consciousness, because we don't have to seek enlightenment. We are all enlightened. That's our natural state. What we need to do is remove the programmed barriers of vibrational layers of the onion, if you like, that stop the conscious mind being aware of its higher levels of awareness. And once that happens, your life changes.
Yes.
No more little me, no more on my knees to anybody. That all changes when your mind gets out of the way.
Including religions, like you've got brainwash, a lot of brainwashing there to keep us from actually expanding into that higher level of consciousness. The manipulation behind, like Opus Dei or the Jesuits or Catholic Church.
I used to have a saying years ago, God save us from religion. And, religion is mind.
Yeah.
Fighting in uniform is mind. Going on violent protests is mind. All these things are expressions of mind. Consciousness does not fight. Consciousness does not acquiesce. Consciousness does not get down on its knees and worship itself, in effect, or worship some deity that someone's decided they should worship to be, part of a church structure. You've got to believe this, or you're not a Christian. You've got to believe this, or you're not Judaism. You've got to believe this, or you're not a Muslim. In other words, don't go out of that box, or you're not one of us anymore.
Yes.
It's classic mind imprisonment. And so, in a conscious world, which is what we're going towards, religion will be. We might talk about it if we're discussing the old times, but we won't be doing it because consciousness doesn't do religion, just as it doesn't do hierarchical structures, fear, acquiescence, and all these things. Now, you take all those out of today's society, you are in a completely different world, and that's what we're going into.
Yeah. When you talked just a little while ago there about synchronicity and the magic of life and the playfulness of life when you're in the flow and everything is going smoothly. Do you remember the other day when we went into the Barcelona musical theatre? What did you see there when you walked through the door? We went down the steps. What was on that big back wall?
Yeah, what I saw was, first of all, a big poster for some show involving dragons, reptilians.
This was the zoo there. They're going to do
it was the zoo, was it? It sounded speak Spanish.
Zoo, the dragons in the zoo.
I thought it was a show because it was all in Spanish and it was in a theatre. I thought
the huge dragon, on the back wall.
It was the zoo. Well, that was interesting.
The zoo.
And right next to that one was
for Tibidabo.
Something to do with the moon.
Yeah, there's a cartoon in 4D thing in Tibidabo up in the big play park. And it says, Pugem a la luna, let's go up to the moon.
Yeah.
On either side. Now, in David's talk, he talks about the dragons, all the symbolism, the masonry symbolism, and goes into great depth. In fact, today we spent 2 hours travelling around the Gothic area looking at all the dragons, all the symbolism.
Barcelona is full of dragons, it is.
Yeah.
All the architecture of a certain age, it's just churches and other, long-standing buildings. They're just full of dragon symbolism. But and also I was looking around the theatre after seeing the dragon poster and the moon poster right at the entrance as I walked in. They were doing a rehearsal of Hair, weren't they?
Oh yes, Hair,
dawning
the musical.
of the Age of Aquarius and all that stuff. Yeah. So
and we started singing Age of Aquarius there, so it was just so synchronistic.
Well, I didn't
David?
start singing because I didn't want to clear the building. My singing can clear a building quicker than a fire alarm, I tell you. But I know these are small things in a way, but once you start following your intuitive knowing, these small, fine detail and major synchronistic events in your life just become part of your life. You start to accept them because they're common to you, and it can happen to anybody. Once you get out of mind, which is blocking this flow and trying to hold you on the train tracks, then you allow in this incredible adventure of life, which is open to all of us. I don't care if you're well known or work in a store or work in an office or sweep the streets. Very important people sweep the streets. A state would be in if they weren't around. But yet they get looked down upon. Oh, he sweeps the streets. Well, it's a bloody good job he does, or we'd be in trouble. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. That's just an experience. Just an experience. It's not who you are. You are not a street cleaner. You are not a doctor. That's your experience. You are consciousness. And when you break out of that limited perception of self-identity with job, body, name, and such like, then you break into the real level that all of us are, which is consciousness, and everything changes. And it's a world that we are going to see expand and expand as what we call the years pass. And our children and grandchildren are going to live in a very different world to the one that we have lived in and are still living in to a large extent.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say is your sole purpose, your mission in life? Helping people to wake up through exposing the darker side? Or how would you define yourself, your job?
I don't. I don't have a job.
Okay.
I don't have a mission. I get up every day and I do what I believe and know to be right, and I follow my intuitive knowing. That's it. Whatever it is that's been pushing me through the years, I just open myself to allow it to go on pushing me and bringing into my life what I need to experience, what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And it's a hoot, really. I mean, there are many challenges and many people trying to bring you down, but they won't, because this is the way it's going to be. We're in an epoch change. And I don't care whether you've got letters after your name or you're Queen this or Fanny this or whatever, Lord this. I don't care if you own newspaper bloody empires or you run the European Union or whatever. It doesn't matter. Those people are a fly on an elephant's back to this epoch change. And they're going to have to face that. I think some of them are beginning to see it, but they're going to have to face that big time in the next few years. And they might expand their awareness and consciousness and become who they could truly be as a result of that as well. And no one will be clapping round of applause if that happens more than me, because I have no animosity towards these people. I have no hatred of them, because if we hate these people and we have animosity towards them, then we become them. What you fight, you become. So I'm not fighting these people. I don't want to fight anybody. I'm not interested in fighting. I'm interested in letting the information be the awakener of people to their true magnitude. And the more opportunities that I get, and my goodness me, they're coming out the woodwork now. Yes. Fantastic to get this information out. The more people will have the opportunity to realize that they're not who they thought they were. Mm-hmm. They are amazing. Yes. And we're going to live in a great world. My kids are going to live in a great world. My grandkids are going to live in an even better world, because this is going to move on and get more and more expansive. And it's just I just feel so privileged to be who I am, doing what I am at the time that I'm doing it. It's just it's surreal to me. It's surreal. Yes. But it's a nice surreal, and I think it's going to get nicer really eventually when we see the real roots and the real foundations of this control system start to come down. Yeah. It's an amazing place, this reality, because when you're in an out of body state, you resonate to the frequency that goes with your state of awareness. And so different states of consciousness don't gravitate to each other because they're on different frequencies, they're in different realms of reality. But through this, what we call physical vehicle, through this holographic computer, as I call it, consciousness of infinite states of awareness can interact with other consciousness of infinite states of awareness. We can share the same reality, and that's what makes this reality so interesting, challenging, because it's very vibrationally dense at the moment, but not as much as it was. But it's a wonderful place to experience and interact and play the game of life, which goes on forever and ever.
And ever.
Yeah, it's just an experience. Whatever experience we're having, good, bad, or indifferent, it ain't forever. Yeah. It will change, and the only thing that's forever is life itself.
Mm-hmm. Great time to be alive, David.
It is. Well, it's a great time to be alive here, because all eternity we are alive, because that's all we can be.
That's all we can be. Infinite consciousness.
Ain't that a good way to end?
Yeah, that means we're ending.
You know what they used to call me years ago? They used to say, David Icke's the prophet of doom. That's what they used to say in the early 90s. He's the prophet of doom. And actually, nothing could be further from the truth, really, because when you see life for what it is, it's a joy, or should be a joy, and it's our choice to make it a joy.
Full of love, happiness, peace, harmony, vibrating together.
Or war, stress,
we choose.
Fear, we choose.
Our choice.
Yeah, collectively and individually, and we're at a real enormous point of choice now.
Yeah.
But the way it's going, it's a done deal. It's part of the story of this reality is that we're now entering a period of enormous expansion. Hallelujah to that, brother and sister. And the Pope's coming. Coming Sunday.
The Pope's coming Sunday. And Amma, the famous spiritual...
The hugger.
The hugger is here as well this weekend.
Yes, and so the Pope's coming on Sunday. I sent him an invite to the talk Saturday. He said he was busy. And he never invited me to see his sermon on Sunday, but if he did, I'd be busy as well. Still, takes all sorts.
Okay, David, well...
Been a pleasure, Suzanne.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks a million for your time, for your patience.
No problems.
And we wish you all the success for Saturday. And you're going to have a major event in 2013, October.
12.
Or 2012.
October 27th.
October the 27th.
We're going to have a big event, a real big event in London. I've got to do the contract details yet. But we're going to have a real big event in October 2012,
So we'll enjoy you on Saturday, and we hope you enjoy us on Saturday. Big time.
It's a hoot in Barcelona. I've had great fun already. It's an amazing place. Great people too.
Okay. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Mine's a large one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.